Hello and welcome to another Spirit of Nature art video tutorial, and welcome back to part 2 of this beautiful but rather complex little spread. This is where we got to last time. We had done the background page with the Buddha and his wings and done the cutout and started to add the colour to this part of the page along with some of the collage pieces. So here I am now, I'm just auditioning a few stamps because I want to get some texture into that background. So I've just found a stamp that's got a bit of squiggly text on and I've picked out that same distress ink in Peacock, and I'm not trying to get a perfect impression of this stamp. That's why I'm not using a stamping block. I'm putting the ink on and I'm picking it up and I'm just kind of placing it, perhaps putting more pressure on one area than the other. I just want to get some texture from that stamp rather than the perfect impression. So that's just starting to bring that page back to life. And this is where things start to go, I'm all over the place when I'm watching back this video. I literally go from one side of the page to the other, I half do something, come back to it. So what I'm doing here is I'm going back with that Derwent Inktense pencil and putting back in the leaves of that wreath that I painted over last time. So just starting to bring those back in. But I don't finish it. I go over to the other side of the page and I start looking at putting in some of those collage details. So these were the pieces that I cut out of some of the jelly press, just kind of scraps that I had left over from other projects. So I'm just edging them with the same distress ink and starting to put those in place. But before I put them in place, I dash back over to the other side of the page again, and now I've got my Signo Uniball white pen and I'm just doing some real sketchy outline to those collage pieces. I'm purposefully doing it quite sketchy. I really don't want it to be perfect. In fact, this pen's running out and I'm still using it because it means it gives me that imperfect line. So that's that kind of look that I'm going for here. So I'm just outlining each of those collage leaves and adding in a little bit of detail. And then once I've done that, I go back over to the other side of the page again and I do the same sketching on my little daisy there, adding in some more detail so that it kind of starts to match what's on the other side of the page. So if I do something on one part of the page, I like to repeat that on the other. It starts to bring, you know, those different elements together. So rather than finishing the collage on that side of the page, I now go back to those leaves on that wreath and I just use a little bit of water and I'm now activating that Derwent Inktense pencil. Now I'm really aware here that I've used distress ink in the background, which is also water reactive. So I'm using a teeny tiny amount of water here to activate the Inktense pencil, because I don't want the distress inks to be moving in the background as well. So just because it's something water reactive, it doesn't mean you can't use water, it just means you need to use a very small amount. So now I have done that, I'm just kind of bringing myself back to looking at the other side of the page again. Honestly, I'm clearly all over the place today. So I'm bringing in those collage pieces now and I am going to fiddle around with them for quite some time, deciding which things are going to go where and trying things out just to get that kind of balanced look on the page really. There's no right or wrong, there's just figuring out what feels right when you do it. So this seems to be the final kind of presentation here. So now it's time to stick those pieces down, but not forgetting to edge them first so that we get rid of all those white cut edges. So again, using that same distress ink, edging it to the pieces before I then stick them down using my tacky glue. So whilst I've got the Distress ink out and the blending tool, I'm going to edge all of the pages as well, and where I've cut out that portal in the middle. I'm just realising I need to cut the bottom of those leaves off before I can edge the page. So now I'm going back in with my Signo Uniball white pen there and doing the same sketchy on the outline of the new collage pieces that I've put down again, so everything starts to come together and looks like it's part of the same spread, even though it's crossing two pages. And doing the same on the leaves on the wreath as well. As soon as you start adding shading and highlight and different colours, everything, it starts to kind of bring it off the page. It's no longer just flat on the page. It starts to feel like you've got more of that 3D effect. You can get some depth, a field in there as well. So it's always worth going in and adding highlights and shading. I can honestly highlight and shade until the cows come home. It's such a nice, peaceful, repetitive thing to do that doesn't take an awful lot of thought. So it really does kind of act like its own little meditation within the whole project. So now going in and doing some more shading. So I'm back with my Inktense pencil, but I've chosen the purple one this time, just to bring out that purple colour, particularly from those leaves that I've put on the other page. But also that purple feels like it's a deeper colour for doing the shading. So I'm just going around and just really gently, I'm not putting lots of that pencil on there, so I'm not pressing really hard, just a really light kind of sketch around the edge, because again, I don't want to use very much water. I just want to use a very small amount of water just to get a very light feel. That's one of the things I love about the Inktense pencils, is that you can use them in different ways to get very different effects. So I could have drawn really hard and put a lot of pressure on and got a really, really deep line there. But just that light sketch and a little bit of water gives that nice, gentle shading. Hopefully you can see as I'm doing that shading, the page starting to change. It just has much more depth to it. And now I want to add similar shading onto my flying Buddha on the back page there. So again, to make these 4 pages all come together and feel like they're part of the same spread, if I do something in one place on the spread, I want to repeat that on the other as well. So it starts to really feel like it's all together. So this is where I've done that here. So I've got the Signo Uniball pen and I'm putting the highlights in just like I did on the front page, but I actually don't like it. So this is one of the things that I do go back to later and just adjust slightly just to soften it. So, you know, that again, it's one of those things about mixed media, is you can always add another layer which changes it. So even if there's something you're not happy with, it doesn't mean you can't keep fiddling with it. So I do go back to that and change that a bit later on. So yeah, just carrying on with lots of shading. of work now on the last, on the 3 pages, and just starting to add a little bit of shading here to where I've put that jelly background, but I don't want to forget that 3rd page in the spread as well. But before I go back to that, I'm really keen to add splatters. Splatters are always great and another brilliant way of bringing everything together. So I've just protected my my Buddha through the portal there with a cereal packet insert, and I'm bringing in those same distress ink sprays that I used earlier on, and I'm just using a paintbrush just to splatter them on, so you get that much more intense splatter rather than earlier on in the project we diluted it quite a lot with water. So this means that we're going to get the much darker purple and darker blue sitting on top of the watered down ones that we used earlier on. And now just see, look, I'm dashing around all over the place, aren't I? Started to go to that 3rd page and then came back to this. I'm just using the white pen just to do it again, that really sketchy outline. That's the effect that I want. So again, I'm kind of copying that all the way through and just adding a little bit of mark making, just some little dots down the bottom there where the leaves are sort of hitting the bottom of the page there, just to kind of soften that so they don't look like they're just kind of, you know, poking out of nowhere. And again, if I've done something one place, I like to repeat that a couple of times on the different areas of the spread to bring it together. So I'm just bringing in my Posca pen there because it's got slightly bigger nib, so it allows for some slightly bigger dots. And I've just placed a little bit of paper there again just to protect my Buddha whilst I do some white splatters. So this is the, I think the Dina Wakley Gloss White Spray, just to get some white splatters on there. And now I'm back to the 3rd page, wanting to get some colour onto there. So it's really easy when you're doing these kind of multi-page projects to forget about the back of the page, but of course it's not the back of the page when you turn it. So this page has also been gessoed, and I'm adding the distress sprays slightly differently this time because I don't want it going everywhere. It didn't matter so much on those other pages. I wanted it to go everywhere and find its own space. Here I want to get a similar effect but without, you know, the potential of messing up what I've already done. So I'm just using a paintbrush to kind of gently put that spray onto the page, a bit like watercolour, and drying it again in between the different layers so that I can still get that sort of marbly effect. So I'm going in now with the purple, just really gently adding it, a little bit of water spray there, but I'm trying to keep this really subtle, partly because I don't want to kind of move the distress ink that I've used on the other pages already by getting everything too wet, but also because the Buddha on the other page has quite a strong piece. We've got the mandala behind it. It really doesn't need anything kind of really overwhelming on this page. We want the eye to be drawn to the Buddha. So as I said, if I do something one place on the spread, I want to repeat it elsewhere because it makes everything start to feel like it all belongs together. So I've got that same stamp that I used on the other page and bringing that in, not just on that 3rd page, but also on the 4th page as well. And you'll notice I sort of spanned it so that it went across the mandala element and onto the actual page. So it spanned that the transition, and again that's another thing that just kind of softens those harsh edges. And just using the blending tool and the distress ink just to edge all of the pages. Going in with my Signo Uniball white gel pen, just going around the edges again, that nice sketching, and on this cutout bit here I am going around the cutout, just to give it that kind of edged feel. And now I want to add my sentiment. So I've got this little kit of, it's a really cute little kit of like typeset letters. I just got it on eBay years ago. So it's one of those things that I pull out quite often to use for my spreads. So I'm just using, I started to use the Peacock Distress ink and it just blended into the background too much. So I then picked Seedless Preserves, I think, which was the nearest that I had to the purple that I used on the spray. So I'm just going straight in, stamping straight onto the page. I quite like that. What I like about this stamp set is I quite like all the little extra bits that you get around the letters as well, so it looks like it's, you know, from a proper old print press. And I also don't mind that you know, the letters aren't exactly lined up. We've got, you know, the odd one a little bit higher than the other. It's like an old typewriter effect that you get. Even though I'd used the purple, still wasn't happy that it was standing out quite enough. So I tried a few different things before I was happy. So I just got my purple micron pen and went back over. I was trying to add kind of edges and highlights to the letters rather than going directly over it, almost like a shadowing, but still wasn't happy with how that came out. Didn't really seem to pop it from the background enough for me. So then I thought I would go in with some a white kind of chalk pastel pencil and kind of put some white behind those letters so that might help them pop from the page a little bit. But that didn't really seem to do what I wanted it to either. So then I started doing some dots with my Signo Uniball pen, again trying to think if I can get more white behind it, it will lift those letters, but didn't really do what I wanted it to. I still felt that those letters were too pale in the background. So I was kind of wondering what to do here, which is why I got the dryer out, basically looking at it, tapping it, thinking, oh, what can I do here? And then I remembered my, oh, I can't remember the name of these pencils, I'll put them below. They are Prisma colour, the Prisma pencils. These are a very waxy pencil, and I often use them for doing Zentangle gems and things like that. They blend together really nicely, but they're very waxy, and it just kind of occurred to me that that would work really well. It would sit on the page really well, and it does. As you can see, it really pops those letters out. And then whilst I've got that pencil in my hand, I think, this will also help me to go over the white highlighting that I put on the Buddha wings that I felt was a bit harsh. So I've used it there as well, just going over the top of that highlighting, just so it's not quite so bright white. So I was glad I remembered these pencils. I hadn't used them for ages. Sometimes I forget what I've got. So when you have a little problem, it's, you know, and you've got to solve it with what you've got, sometimes it reminds you of things that you have and you get them out. And so I think I'm going to be using these again in the next project too, because I was reminded how much I enjoyed them. So just going in and adding a few more finishing touches now around the sentiment. So just really a bit of mark making, just helping the sentiment kind of settle in the page a little bit as well. And that, I think, finally, after a bit of a mammoth 2 videos, that's it. Here it is, the finished piece. For me, it's really captured that sense of zen that I get down in my summer house, and I've thoroughly enjoyed making it. And I hope you've enjoyed watching it too, and I'll see you soon.